Everyone likes each other, everyone gets along. 20 years is a long time, and it's a very cool work environment.
You see, music has always pushed boundaries, but in the 1980s and 90s, hip-hop did more than just push, it smashed them. This new sound gave a voice to people who were rarely heard, and their stories about life on the streets were sometimes raw, angry, and incredibly honest. This honesty made a lot of people in power very nervous. Here are the stories of 20 hip-hop albums that were so controversial they tried to get them erased from history. 1. 2 Live Crew. As Nasty as They Wanna Be. Let's start with the album that literally went on trial. When 2 Live Crew from Miami released As Nasty as They Wanna Be, they just wanted to make party music for the clubs. The album was full of heavy bass beats and lyrics that described adult party scenes in very, very clear detail. To put it mildly, some people were not ready for it. A lawyer in Florida named Jack Thompson got a copy of the album and launched a huge campaign against it. He claimed the lyrics were obscene and harmful. Because of his efforts, a judge in Florida declared the album legally obscene, which was a first in American history. This meant that selling the album became a crime in several counties. Police officers started going into record stores and arresting the clerks just for having it on the shelves. The members of 2 Live Crew were even arrested after performing their songs at a nightclub. The thing nobody tells you is that this case went all the way to the U.S. Court of Appeals, which eventually overturned the ruling, stating that the album did have artistic value. The controversy made the album a massive seller, moving over 2 million copies. But if you think some party lyrics caused a stir, just wait until you hear about the group that got an official warning letter sent to their record label from the FBI to NWA. Straight Outta Compton.
Not from the records, from jacking a crowd just like burglary. The definition is jacking.
In 1988, a group from Compton, California, changed music forever. NWA, which stood for N-Words with Attitudes, released their debut album, Straight Outta Compton. This wasn't party music, it was what they called reality rap. The members, like Ice Cube, Dr. Dre, and Eazy-E, told stories about what they saw every day, things like poverty, street gangs, and intense encounters with the police. One song in particular, titled F the Police, caused a massive explosion of controversy. The song is set up like a courtroom scene where the group puts the police department on trial. It described feelings of being unfairly targeted and mistreated by law enforcement. Many radio stations refused to play it, and police organizations across the country called for a boycott of their concerts. What's truly wild is that the FBI got involved. A top official sent a letter to NWA's record label, Priority Records, accusing the group of encouraging violence and disrespect towards police officers. This was an incredible moment. The federal government was officially weighing in on a rap song. Of course, this only made NWA more famous, turning them into symbols of rebellion for young people everywhere. NWA put their city on the map with stories that shocked the nation. But another group from the South told tales of street life that were so intense their own record company refused to release the album at first. 3. Ghetto Boys, the Ghetto Boys.
So I'm watching my back, I can see them when I'm deep in the covers.
The Ghetto Boys from Houston, Texas were known for a style of rap that was dark and often felt like a horror movie. Their lyrics, delivered by members Scarface, Willie D, and the unforgettable Bushwick Bill, painted pictures of street life that were incredibly grim and unsettling. When they put together their 1990 self-titled album, it was supposed to be their big break. Their record label, Def American, was run by a famous producer named Rick Rubin. But when the album's distributor, Geffen Records, heard the final product, they refused to have anything to do with it. They were shocked by the content, which included stories of paranoia and characters committing terrible acts. Geffen was worried about the public reaction. The thing nobody tells you is that Rick Rubin had to find a new distributor just to get the album into stores. The album cover itself was a huge source of controversy. It showed a real photo of group member Bushwick Bill in the hospital right after a serious incident involving his eye. Many stores refused to carry it because of the graphic nature of both the music and the artwork. The Ghetto Boys used horror stories to get their point across, and it worked. But our next artist was so direct with his message that some people saw his music as a real threat to the country's order. 4. Ice-T, Body Count.
The world's insane while you drink champagne and I'm living in black rain.
Count Ice-T was already a famous and respected rapper from Los Angeles who helped create the gangsta rap genre. But in 1992, he decided to do something different. He formed a heavy metal band called Body Count and released a self-titled album. For the most part, people were just enjoying the new sound. That is, until they paid close attention to the final track on the album. The song was called Cop Killer. The song was written from the point of view of a character who was fed up with police mistreatment and decided to take matters into his own hands. Ice-T said he was writing from a fictional character's perspective, just like an actor playing a part in a movie. But many people did not see it that way. Police groups were outraged, and the controversy quickly reached the highest levels of government. Both the president and vice president at the time publicly condemned Ice-T and the song. There was immense pressure on Time Warner, the company that owned the record label. They were flooded with angry letters and threats of boycotts. The pressure became so intense that Ice-T eventually decided to pull the song from the album himself. New copies of the Body Count album were shipped without the track, making the original version a rare and controversial collector's item. Ice-T had to remove a song from his own album due to political pressure. But what about an artist who was accused of turning against his own community with his lyrics? That's what happened next. 5. Ice Cube, Death Certificate. After leaving NWA over business disagreements, Ice Cube became one of the most powerful and political voices in hip-hop. His 1991 album, Death Certificate, was a masterpiece of social commentary, but it was also filled with rage. The album was divided into two sides, the death side, which described the problems, and the life side, which looked for solutions. The controversy exploded around a song called Black Korea. The song expressed the anger and frustration that many in the black community felt towards Korean American store owners in their neighborhoods. It was released during a time of high tension between the two communities in Los Angeles, and many people felt the song was promoting bad feelings and possibly even violence. The album was condemned by Asian American groups and others who felt it crossed a line. Billboard magazine, a huge music industry publication, even printed an editorial speaking out against the song. What many overlooked is that the album also had a diss track aimed at his old group NWA called No Vaseline, which was also seen as highly controversial for its aggressive and personal language. Despite the protests, the album was a huge success, debuting at number 2 on the charts. Ice Cube's words created a firestorm of debate, but our next group used their music to teach history and politics, and some powerful people found their lessons to be very, very dangerous. 6. Public Enemy, Fear of a Black Planet. Public Enemy wasn't just a rap group, they were a movement. Led by the powerful voice of Chuck D, their music was a dense mix of funky beats, sirens, and political speeches. Their goal was to educate and empower their listeners. Their 1990 album, Fear of a Black Planet, was their most ambitious project yet, tackling huge topics like racism and power structures in America. The controversy surrounding this album was complex. One source came from a member of the group, Professor Griff, who had made some offensive comments in an interview that were seen as anti-Semitic. This caused a huge media storm right before the album's release. Chuck D even briefly broke up the group over it. But the album's content itself also made people nervous. Songs like Fight the Power became anthems at protests, and the group's pro-black message was seen as threatening by some parts of white America. They were accused of being anti-white and of promoting division. What's amazing is that despite, or maybe because of, the controversy, the album became a global phenomenon. It sold over 1 million copies in its first week, a staggering number for such a politically charged hip-hop album at the time. Public Enemy was seen as a political threat. But another group from their same scene was criticized for different reasons, for messages that some people believed were harmful to their own. Community 7, Brand Nubian, 1 for O, all coming out of New York. Brand Nubian was part of a wave of hip-hop that was focused on knowledge, consciousness, and social issues. Their debut album, 1 for All, is considered a classic for its smooth, jazzy beats and intelligent lyrics. The group, which included members Grand Puba, Sadat X, and Lord Jamar, were followers of the 5% Nation, a movement focused on black empowerment and spiritual teachings. This is where the trouble started for them. Some of the lyrics on the album were interpreted as being discriminatory. Specifically, a track called Drop the Bomb contained lines that were critical of the same gender. In the music video for their song Wake Up, a character in whiteface makeup was shown who was meant to represent a devilish or evil person. This led to the video being banned by MTV. The TV network felt the imagery was too controversial for their audience. Many people felt that the group's message, while positive in some ways, also included ideas of intolerance. It was a complicated situation where a group trying to uplift their community was also being accused of putting another community down. Brand Nubian's videos were pulled from television, but our next artist made an entire album that was so confrontational, his record label decided to change the cover art without even telling him. 8. Paris, The Devil Made Me Do It. Paris, a rapper from the San Francisco Bay Area, was known from the very beginning for his radical politics. He was an unapologetic supporter of the Black Panther Party, and his music was filled with angry, revolutionary messages. His debut album, The Devil Made Me Do It, was a direct assault on what he saw as a racist system. The album's original cover art was a picture of him holding a big rifle waiting behind a tree. His record label, Tommy Boy Records, got nervous. They thought the image was too aggressive and might attract negative attention. So, what many overlooked is that the label secretly changed the artwork for the album's main release, swapping it for a less threatening photo of Paris. But the controversy didn't stop there. The album contained a song called Bush Killa, a fantasy story about harming the president at the time. This was seen as way over the line. What's more, Paris included the home address of a police officer involved in a high-profile case in his album's liner notes. This combination of radical politics and direct threats made Paris one of the most feared and censored artists of his time. Paris was so radical, his own label censored his art. The next artist on our list was just as tough, but his album cover controversy came from a conflict with a major corporation. 9. Kool G Rap and DJ Polo, Live and Let Die. Kool G Rap is a legend from Queens, New York, known as one of the godfathers of mafioso rap. His detailed stories about crime and street justice were told with incredible skill. For his 1992 album with DJ Polo, Live and Let Die, he wanted a cover that matched the tough guy image of his music. The original album cover was a striking photograph. It showed Kool G Rap and DJ Polo in suits, holding leashes attached to 2 fierce Rottweiler dogs. In front of them, 2 men in butcher aprons are hanging meat on hooks, and a man in a chair with a bag over his head looks like he's in big trouble. The problem? One of the men in the background was wearing a t-shirt with the logo of the airline Pan Am on it. When the airline company saw the album cover, they were not happy. They threatened to sue the record label, Warner Brothers Records, for using their logo in such a violent and negative context. The label panicked and decided to pull the original album cover. They replaced it with a much simpler cartoon-style drawing. The music itself was also a source of trouble. Major music store chains refused to stock the album because of its dark and graphic lyrical themes. A corporate logo forced an album cover change. But what happens when an artist's entire message is about celebrating something that is against the law? That's what our next group was all about. 10. Cypress Hill. Cypress Hill. When Cypress Hill came on the scene in 1991, they sounded like nobody else. DJ Muggs created a spooky, funky, and psychedelic sound, while rappers Be Real and Sen Dog delivered rhymes in a unique, nasal style. Their debut, self-titled album was a hit, but it was also groundbreaking for one big reason: its open and proud celebration of using a certain green, leafy substance. While other rappers had mentioned party plants before, Cypress Hill made it the main focus of their identity. Songs like Light Another and Stoned is the Way of the Walk were all about getting high. This was shocking at the time. They were not only admitting to doing something illegal, they were encouraging it and making it sound fun. This led to them being banned from many radio stations. What many people don't know is that the group was even banned from performing on the famous TV show Saturday Night Live for life. During their performance, DJ Muggs lit up a joint on live television, which was a huge no-no. Their pro-plant stance made them heroes to many young fans, but also made them a target for parent groups and politicians who accused them of promoting illegal activities. Cypress Hill got banned from TV for their love of plants. But the next rapper on our list created an album so dark and grim it was almost never released at all. 11. Spice 187. He wrote Spice 1 from Northern California, was known for his hardcore rhymes and stories of street danger. His 1993 album, 187 he wrote, was named after the police code for a homicide. That title alone should tell you what the album was about. It was a bleak, intense journey into a world of violence and desperation. The controversy started with the album's first single, a song called Trigga Gots No Heart. The song was included on the soundtrack for a popular movie called Menace. To Society. The problem was, the lyrics were so graphic and told such a dark story of a person without remorse that the rapper's own record label, Jive Records, almost refused to release the song. There was a huge internal debate at the company about whether the content was too extreme for the public. A similar issue arose with a song on the album called The Murda Show, which featured another hardcore rapper, MC AE. The stories in the song were so descriptive about acts of violence that it made many people in the industry nervous. The album was a commercial success, but it was also a prime example of the kind of music that politicians were pointing to when they talked about the dangers of gangsta rap. Spice One's label was scared of his lyrics. But what about a group that was not only telling street stories, but was actively calling for a revolution? 12. Da Lynch Mob, Gorillas in the Mist.
So I can boom, shakalaka boom. That's the sound of the...
After Ice Cube left NWA, he didn't just start a solo career, he also put together a new group called Da Lynch Mob. The group, which featured rappers J.D., Shorty, and T-Bone, was even more political and aggressive than NWA. Their debut album, Gorillas in the Mist, was released in 1992, right in the middle of the heated atmosphere following the Los Angeles riots. The album was pure fire and fury. The title itself was a play on the movie Gorillas in the Mist, and the music was a call to action for black people to fight back against oppression. The lyrics were uncompromising and sometimes described violent fantasies against their perceived enemies. The album's original music video for the title track was banned by MTV because it showed realistic scenes of people taking revenge. What many overlooked is that the album's liner notes contained pictures of the group members with weapons, which also scared retailers. Because of its radical message and angry tone, the album was seen as incredibly dangerous by the mainstream media. It was a perfect example of how the tense political climate of the early 90s was reflected in its most powerful music. Da Lench Mob's revolutionary message was too much for TV. But our next artist's message was so personal and revealing, it felt like you were listening to a private therapy session, and some of it was deeply disturbing. 13. Eminem, the Slim Shady LP. Just sneaking in at the end of the 90s, a rapper from Detroit named Eminem burst onto the scene with the Slim Shady LP. Produced by the legendary Dr. Dre, the album was a massive hit, but it was also one of the most controversial records of the decade. Eminem introduced the world to his alter ego, Slim Shady, a wild and unhinged character who said and did terrible things. The controversy was everywhere. The lyrics were full of cartoonish, over-the-top violence and dark humor. One song told a shocking story about a dispute with the mother of his child that had a very grim ending. Another song was criticized for its language, which many people found to be offensive towards certain groups. Eminem argued that he was playing a character, that Slim Shady was not him, but a way to express his darkest thoughts. Many critics and listeners did not buy it. He was accused of promoting violence against women and of being a bad influence on the young fans who loved his catchy, clever songs. The album sparked protests and calls for boycotts, and it made Eminem a household name and a villain to concerned parents everywhere. Eminem's alter ego shocked the world, but long before him, another artist was known for being the ultimate storyteller of the high life, and his album got him in trouble for being a little too honest. 14. Snoop Dogg, Doggy Style. After being the breakout star on Dr. Dre's album The Chronic, the world was waiting for Snoop Doggy Dogg's debut. When Doggy Style was released in 1993, it was a monster hit, becoming the fastest-selling debut album ever at the time. The sound was smooth, funky, and perfect for parties. But underneath that smooth sound were lyrics that caused a whole lot of trouble. The album was a celebration of the gangsta lifestyle, full of stories about parties, women, and a certain kind of plant. Many of the songs described romantic encounters in extremely graphic detail. Parent groups and politicians were horrified. They saw Snoop as a symbol of everything that was wrong with youth culture. The thing nobody tells you is that Snoop was also facing serious legal troubles in real life at the time of the album's release, which made the violent themes in his music seem much more real to the public. The album cover, a cartoon drawing by artist Joe Cool, was also seen as too suggestive by some stores. The combination of explicit lyrics and Snoop's real-life court case made Doggy Style a major target in the culture wars of the 90s. Snoop's party album was seen as a danger to society. But what about an album that was so influential it basically created the blueprint for Snoop's sound, yet was just as controversial? 15. Dr. Dre, The Chronic.
To keep your eyes slanted. So check the flavor that I'm bringing. The motherfucking DRE. I keep the
It's impossible to talk about 90s hip-hop without talking about The Chronic. After leaving NWA, Dr. Dre created a whole new sound called G-Funk. It was smoother and more musical than his earlier work, but the content was just as hardcore. The album was a massive success that changed the sound of music, but it was also at the center of the debate over gangsta rap. Like Doggy Style, which came out a year later, The Chronic was full of explicit tales of life in South Central Los Angeles. The lyrics were criticized for what some people saw as the glorification of a dangerous lifestyle and for its negative portrayal of women. Songs like Nothing But a G-Thang were huge hits, but their videos, which showed wild house parties, were often edited for television. The album was also one of the first to have a big, black and white, parental advisory explicit lyrics sticker right on the front. This sticker, which was the result of a campaign by a group led by Tipper Gore, was meant to warn parents. What it actually did was make the album even more attractive to rebellious teens, turning it into a must-have item. The Chronic's warning sticker became a badge of honor, but years before that album, an artist from the Bay Area was making music so explicit he was basically the founding father of controversial rap. 16. Too Short, Born to Mac. Long before Snoop and Dre, there was Too Short. This rapper from Oakland, California, was a pioneer of West Coast hip-hop, and he was known for one thing above all else: his incredibly explicit stories about his life as a pimp. His 1987 album, Born to Mac, was raw, low-budget, and completely unapologetic. Too Short didn't use clever metaphors. He told you exactly what was on his mind. His songs were long, detailed stories about his relationships with women, which were often very one-sided and focused on making money. This made him a hero in his neighborhood, but a villain to many outside of it. His music was seen as deeply disrespectful to women. Many mainstream record stores refused to carry his albums, and radio stations wouldn't touch his songs. What's amazing is that he built his entire career without any mainstream help. He sold his tapes out of the trunk of his car and built a huge following from the ground up. He proved that an artist could be successful even if the entire music industry was against them. Too Short built an empire by being too explicit for the mainstream. But it wasn't just men making controversial music. Our next artists were a group of women who got in trouble for being too bold. 17. Salt and Peppa, Assault with a Deadly. Peppa, Salt and Peppa were trailblazers. They were one of the first all-female rap groups to become huge superstars. They were known for their fun, upbeat party tracks and their empowering messages for women. But on their second album, Assault with a Deadly Peppa, they ran into some trouble for a song that was all about female desire. The song was Push It. While it had been released earlier as a B-side, its massive popularity meant it was added to this album. The lyrics weren't super explicit by today's standards, but in 1988, a song where women were so openly talking about their physical wants was still a bit shocking to some. The song was banned or censored by a number of radio stations in the United States and even in the United Kingdom. The music video, which featured the group in tight spandex outfits and doing suggestive dance moves, was also considered too racy by some. It was a classic double standard. Male artists could rap about their desires all day long, but when women did it, it was suddenly a problem. Even a fun dance track from a female group could get banned. But our next album was from a group that some people felt was a straight-up copy of a more famous act. And their controversy came from a very strange place. 18. Above the Law, Livin' Like Hustlers. Above the Law was a group from Pomona, California, and they were signed to Eazy-E's label, Ruthless Records, the same label as NWA. In fact, Dr. Dre produced their entire debut album, Livin' Like Hustlers. Because of this, many people saw them as a sort of NWA Junior. Their music was hardcore gangsta rap, full of stories about crime and street life. The album was controversial for its violent content, just like many others at the time, but a really strange and specific controversy came from their biggest song, Murder Rap. The music video for the song was very cinematic. It told a story of the group being put on trial and sent to a correctional facility. Here's the wild part. The video used a real news reporter named Trisha Toyota, who was very well known in Los Angeles. She appeared in the video as herself, reporting on the group's fictional case. When her bosses at the news station saw the video, they were furious. They felt it was a conflict of interest and that she was making their news organization look bad by being associated with a gangsta rap video. She was reportedly suspended from her job because of her appearance in the video. A real news reporter got in trouble for being in a music video. Our next group was also from Compton, and their album was banned from a major TV network for a very simple reason. 19. Compton's Most Wanted, Straight Checkin'. Compton's Most Wanted, led by the rapper MC8, was another key group in the West Coast gangsta rap scene. Their style was a little different, a bit more low-key and bluesy, but their stories were just as gritty. Their 1991 album, Straight Checkin' Lem, was a powerful and respected record. The controversy for this album wasn't about the lyrics as much as it was about the visuals. The group filmed a music video for their song Growin' Up in the Hood. The video was a pretty straightforward depiction of the song's lyrics, showing the challenges of life in their neighborhood. However, there was one small detail that caused a big problem. In the video, MC8 was wearing a blue baseball cap. The network MTV saw this and banned the video. Why? They claimed the blue cap was a symbol of a specific street gang, the Crips. MTV had a strict policy at the time against showing any gang-related signs or symbols. The group argued they were just representing where they were from, but the network wouldn't budge. It was a clear example of corporate fear and a misunderstanding of the culture the music was coming from. A blue hat was enough to get a video banned from TV. But for our final album, the controversy wasn't about violence or politics, but about a personal story that hit way too close to home for a rap superstar. 20. The Coup, Genocide and Juice.
Almost 10 o'clock, see I got a ball of lip for property, so I slip my beanie on slopper.
The Coup from Oakland, California, was one of the most intelligent and politically radical groups in hip-hop history. Led by the brilliant and witty rapper Boots Riley, their music was a sharp critique of capitalism and racism, but it was also funky and full of humor. Their 1994 album, Genocide and Juice, which got its name from Snoop Dogg's famous Gin and Juice, was another dose of their revolutionary message. While the album's political themes were challenging, the biggest controversy came from a single song called Pimps. The song included a spoken word part from a guest that described a very negative story about another famous Oakland rapper, the legendary Too Short. The story implied that Too Short had been involved in some very shady business dealings. When Too Short heard the song, he was incredibly angry. He saw it as a huge sign of disrespect. What many people don't know is that the situation became very tense in the local music scene. There was a real fear that the lyrical conflict could spill out into the real world. The record label, Wild Pitch Records, got so nervous about a potential real-life feud that they actually pulled the album from stores for a short time to try and let things cool down. It was a rare case where a personal beef on a record was taken so seriously it led to a temporary ban.